Hi, I'm Jake. So your significant other wants you to play Magic the Gathering. I think that's pretty cool. I understand Magic can be a hard game to get into, especially if it's not something that you are really that interested in to begin with. But I want to talk about 3 points before we talk about any of the rules in the game. The first point is that whoever wants you to play Magic with them, maybe they sent you this video, maybe you found this on your own, doesn't want you to play because they think that you'll be the next world champion, or that you're well on your way to playing in the Pro Tour. They want you to play this game because they want to be able to sit down the table across from you and play a game that they really love. A game that they've invested time and energy and probably a good amount of money into, and try to show you what makes them so excited to play the game. Second, Magic is a game of near infinite complexity. I think you've heard this before, that Magic is a Turing complete game. It's effectively an infinitely complex computer that can handle any input and produce whatever output you want. I think that's really cool, but I think that goes a little bit beyond the expectations of actually playing Magic. The core mechanics of Magic are simple. They can be summarized in probably 10 to 15 lines. And that's all we want to start with. From there, you start to see interactions, you start to see other options beyond those core rules that can do amazing things. Third, I think Magic really succeeds because of its story. And I don't mean the lore of Magic, the characters, and the stories that have been written over the years. No, I mean the story of the game itself. In Magic the Gathering, you as a player are a planeswalker. This is a being of near infinite power who has traveled across the universe from plane to plane to plane, collecting spell books and different memories that are stored away. And when you play a game of Magic, you are dueling against another planeswalker, or several planeswalkers, who each have their own collection of memories arranged in their library. And as the game goes on, you bring these memories to life. You build a battlefield from the lands that you've traveled. You draw magic from those lands to cast amazing spells and summon creatures from across the universe. All with the goal of winning that duel. Beating your opponents by reducing their life total to 0, or reducing the cards in their library to 0. And that's it. It's simple. It's beautiful. The art is amazing. The cards are very well crafted. I really like the game of Magic. So with that said, let's talk about how to play this game. So how do we actually play the game of Magic? Well, the game of Magic always starts with a deck of cards. And off that deck of cards, you're going to shuffle and draw 7. Your starting hand size will always be 7. Now with those 7 cards, you're going to have a mix of different types of cards in your hand. The 2 broad categories are going to be permanent and non-permanent. Permanent spells and lands, when you play them, stay in play. Non-permanents go straight to the graveyard. This means after they're used, they're gone. Non-permanent spells come in 2 flavors, instants and sorceries. Instants, once they are used, go to the graveyard, but you can use them whenever you want. During your opponent's turn, while you're attacking, at the very end of your turn. Sorceries, you can only use during your main phase. Typically, this means that instant spells are really good at responding to what your opponent's doing and doing dynamic actions that are kind of tricky or trying to catch people off guard. Sorceries are more powerful. They typically do similar things to what permanents do, but only once. Permanent spells stick around for a bit. The big categories of permanent spells are going to be lands, like we talked about before. You summon lands from your memories that you can use to draw mana from them, magical power. So as you use your lands to produce mana, you tap them to show that they've been used. Now you can use those mana on a variety of different things. There are a lot of different card types, and they all have different things that they can do. Enchantments sit and play and generally provide kind of a global effect. There are auras that apply effects specifically to creatures, but generally it's pretty broad. You have planeswalkers, which are a type of card that builds up counters or loses counters as the game goes on, and they act as kind of an ally to you, because again, you are a planeswalker within this game. Then there are artifacts. Artifacts are like enchantments where a lot of them provide global effects, but some of them have special effects that they can tap and do things on their own. The big thing to keep in mind with all these permanent cards is until they're destroyed, they stay in play. So you can use them over and over and over and over. And the last card type is creature. And creatures have a unique ability that they can attack and block. And so they have a couple extra numbers on the card. This means that in combat, the first number is how much damage they deal, and the second number is how much damage they can take before they die. And so I know this is a lot of information, but generally, each turn, you only have a certain amount of mana that you can produce with your lands. If you have one land, you produce 1 mana. If you have 2 lands, you produce 2 mana. If you have 3 lands, so each turn, you can cast bigger and bigger things. Once you've cast a spell, and that spell comes into play, it resolves, and it can become a permanent. So any of the creatures that you've cast come into play and stay in play. But as you can imagine, creatures have their own ability to think for themselves, and being hurled across the universe, pulled out of reality, and thrown onto a battlefield can be a little disorienting. So they can't attack the first turn they come into play. They can still block because even confused, you can probably get your hands up in front of your face. But to attack, you have to wait a whole turn. Once a creature is in play, since the beginning of your turn, you can attack with it. And when you attack, you turn it sideways. You tap it to show that it's been used. Then there's some math involved with whether blockers kill the attackers, or attackers kill the blockers, or attackers just deal damage to your opponent, and combat ends. After combat, there is a second main phase. During that second main phase, you can do everything all over again. You can cast spells, you can play lands, you can do everything that you didn't do during the first main phase. As a point of strategy, it's usually good to wait as long as you possibly can to do things. So if you can wait until the second main phase to cast a spell, do that. If you can wait until the end of your opponent's turn to cast an instant, do that. Delay things as long as possible, as long as you can hide information and use that to your advantage. Do that. And that's the rules of Magic. Gameplay continues. Each turn you draw a card. You can play 1 additional land. You can cast spells up to the amount of mana that you can produce. You can attack, and then you can use whatever mana you didn't spend during the first main phase to do more stuff. And then at the end of your turn, you discard until you have 7 cards in your hand, and it's your opponent's turn to go. And that's it. That's the core rules of Magic. The balance of the game exists around the mana costs of the cards that you play. So as the game goes on, you can do bigger and greater things. So at the end of the game, it can get crazy. But all of the steps up until that point are simple, individual steps that you can keep track of. And it becomes easy to see how that gets out of hand quickly. But that's what makes the game fun. And that is how you tell the best stories.